Welcome to the Stoic Responder Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Healy. As a special agent who spent more than 15 years conducting large-scale fraud, money laundering, and public corruption investigations, Stoic philosophy provided a mindset edge that became the foundation of my professional success. My mission today is to share those same ancient mindset lessons with you so that you can turn obstacles into opportunities and adversity into advantage. Time to muster up. All right, folks, welcome back to the Stoic Responder Podcast. It's Friday. This is the last episode of the week. This is episode 25. 25 episodes in already. Today's title is Emergency Reload. Folks, it's July 5th, so I got to give a shout out to my mom. It's her birthday. Happy birthday, Mom. I doubt you're listening, but if you are, happy birthday. Folks, I want to start out with a quote from Seneca. And as long as nothing satisfies you, you yourself cannot satisfy others. Boy, this is very similar to something that I talked about in my LinkedIn newsletter this week. Marcus Aurelius's quote where he talks about it's important to follow the rules yourself if you intend to lead others. This is a very similar concept. As long as nothing satisfies you, you yourself cannot satisfy others, according to Seneca. Now, I'm looking at this through the law enforcement lens here, okay? It has been said by many firearms instructors that I've worked with, that I attended the academy with, that an empty gun is little more than a poorly designed impact weapon. How many times have you heard that? You know, all the firearms instructors have certain verbal tics that seem to be kind of universal, and that's one that I've heard a lot. A gun that is empty, an empty gun, is little more than a poorly designed impact weapon. So that's why we practice things like emergency reloads. That's why we practice our immediate action drills, so that we can get back in the fight. But what happens when your personal magazine runs dry? You see, folks, we're first responders. Our capacity to serve others, to bring happiness and positive influence into their lives, it's intrinsically linked to our own state of contentment. That is what Seneca is saying here. When we are perpetually running on empty, when we are perpetually burned out, when we have hypervigilance has torn us apart, it becomes more challenging to serve those around us. Instead, our actions become tainted by dissatisfaction, leading to a lack of authenticity in our relationships, a lack of care and consciousness in our relationships and interactions, both on and off the job. We get bitter. We get that, I forget what it's called, but, empathy overload. Like we lose the ability to be empathetic, in other words, and it just burns us out. You see, the ability to be a source of strength to others, it's contingent on our ability to first find peace within ourselves. And when we find that internal contentment, our interactions with others immediately become more genuine, more selfless, more enriching. You see, you are no use in a gunfight when your magazine runs dry. Why would you be of any use to others when you are burned out and overwhelmed in your personal life or your professional life? If you want to serve others, you need to prioritize serving yourself first. I know that sounds super easy, but we can't pour water out of an empty cup. We can't. This past weekend, it's a good reminder for me. I had the opportunity to fly up to Montana to record a podcast. I'm going to be on the Cleared Hot podcast with Andy Stumpf in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure exactly when it comes out, but I got an invite to come up and record that podcast. I had a blast. I had never been to Montana before. Now, my wife and I don't get away from our children very often. It doesn't happen more than a couple times a year. Some of you who have been listening for a long time or follow me on social media, you know that my children both have special needs. My youngest is on the autism spectrum. My oldest is mobility challenged. She has cerebral palsy. She doesn't walk very well. So it's difficult for us to leave them. We go on a lot of vacations to Disney World because it's an incredibly accessible place. It's an easy place for us to take them, for them to go. But we don't get to go to a lot of other places, and we definitely don't get to go to a lot of places just the two of us. It's hard to find care for our children, and as they get older, it's more difficult because they become harder to it becomes harder to pick up my daughter and put her in a bathtub. It becomes hard to find someone who is qualified to watch my child who's on the autism spectrum. So we cherish these moments when we do get a chance to go away. When I had the opportunity to go up to Montana, I knew that my wife could use a break. I knew we hadn't had a break together since December. And so I said, let's figure this out. Let's turn this into the first time in 6 months that the two of us get away. And it didn't start out great. We got some mechanical issues on the flight. Flight got delayed. We ended up having to overnight in a hotel in Denver. It was not the best start to a little mini vacation that we could have hoped for, but we got there. We got to Kalispell, Montana. It was absolutely beautiful. We had a great time, recorded the podcast, loved it. We had this beautiful Airbnb looking out at the mountains. And we decided, with one of our days that we were up there, we're only there for 3 days, we decided to go and explore Glacier National Park. Now, if you're listening to this and you have been to Glacier National Park, you are probably going, oh, as you hear me say those words, because anybody who's been to Glacier National Park has that reaction to it. It's an insanely beautiful place. Maybe the prettiest place I've ever been in the United States. Maybe the prettiest place I've ever been, or close to the prettiest place I've ever been in the world in general. I've been to about 15 different countries. We went to Glacier National Park. We spent the day driving. We went up the Going to the Sun Road. We went up into the mountains. The snow was still on the ground. This is June. This is late June. There's still snow on the ground. We turned off the radio. We spent a lot of time talking. We got out every chance that we could and just took it in and walked around and hiked a little bit. And I wish I could have stayed longer. I wish we had more time. But the time that we did have there was incredibly, incredibly beneficial from a mental health perspective. Taking that break to go and do something that we enjoyed, to do something that fulfilled us, to do something that gave us that sense of disconnect. Literally, our phones were like out of use for 6-7 hours. I can't tell you when the last time that happened, where both of us were just, phones weren't even on, weren't even being used. We were just taking it all in and enjoying what we were seeing. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about you can't pour anything out of an empty cup, right? You can't fill someone else's cup if yours is empty. You can't be of any use to anyone if your gun has no bullets left in the magazine. We didn't realize how little water was left in the cup, how burned out we were, until we went and did something that fulfilled us, that filled us back up and brought us back feeling enriched, feeling more connected, not just to each other, but to ourselves, kind of just putting the phone down, getting away from the work for a little bit. So I would encourage you, if you haven't done that in a while, to check and see if your gun is empty, to check and see if that magazine needs that emergency reload, to perform that immediate action drill, to take a mental health day, to take a couple of days off and get the hell out of there. Because when we are perpetually running on empty, whether it is a parent, whether it is as an employee, whether it is as a spouse, when we are perpetually running on empty, it becomes almost impossible to serve those around us with any amount of integrity. And our actions become the opposite of service, in fact. They often lead to fractured relationships, bad interactions on and off the job, and on and on. And all of that can be cured by filling up your own cup, by performing that emergency reload. So I'll leave you with this journal prompt at the end of the week. Ask yourself today, and be honest with yourself, am I trying to operate with an empty magazine? Has the chamber run dry? Did the slide lock back? Does it go click when I pull the trigger? Ask yourself, am I operating with an empty gun? And what actions can I take to reload and get back in the fight? Folks, that's it for the week. Thanks so much for listening. Again, I hope everybody who is on vacation had a great vacation. If you'd like to support this podcast, there's 3 simple ways that you can do it. Number 1, you can pick up a copy of my book, In Valor, 365 Stoic Meditations for First Responders. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you get your books. It's available on Kindle or Nook, or the paperback version, which I prefer because I like to highlight and take notes in my books, especially when it has something to do with philosophy. But it also gives you the opportunity to practice this philosophy with daily quotes, daily integrations, daily journal prompts, just like you get here on the podcast. Number 2, if you want to get this podcast in your mailbox every single day, you can subscribe to the Stoic Responder for free on Substack. You will not only get 4 podcasts a week, will you also get my newsletter. And this week, if you're a subscriber, you've gotten the newsletter on America's Cato, George Washington, and you've gotten the newsletter on Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain's actions at the Battle of Gettysburg, which also happened in July. Happened in July of 1863. But those are 2 stories that I am sharing in my newsletter. They're exclusive to the newsletter. If you want to get those, sign up for the Stoic Responder newsletter for free on Substack, and you'll get the podcast directly into your email box. And finally, number 3, like and subscribe this newsletter so that others can learn about what we are doing here. If you find this content valuable and believe somebody else can benefit from it, please share it as well. That's what I got for you. Until next week, folks, get out there. Have yourselves a great long weekend, great holiday weekend. And until I see you on Tuesday, you are how to roll. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, like, rate, and share this podcast so that we can spread the benefits of Stoicism to other first responders. It will only take you a few moments, but it can help us tremendously. Until next time, out of roll.